Hi, Glenn Samuel here. Look, today I just want to talk to you about graduated filters in landscape photography or with your landscape photography. And I just want to explain to you what they are, how we use them, and why we use them. I often get asked a lot of questions by students in my workshops that why should we use filters? Where do you buy them from? What do you do with them? How do you use them? Well, today I'm just going to run through with you briefly as to what they are and when I use these particular filters and why I use them in my landscape photography. So to get started, basically what they are, they're a piece of glass or a piece of perspex plastic, if you want to call it. Now, I use the glass ones mainly because you virtually get zero color cast out of them. You do get a color cast out of them, but that can be corrected in post edit. But that's not really the issue with them. You've got to know how to use them and why and where to use them. Now, with landscape photography, say for argument's sake you're photographing a landscape where there's mountains coming out of the right or left hand of the frame. So that means you've got a broken horizon line. Now, 9 times out of 10, when you set your camera to aperture priority and you take a meter reading, the camera is metering for the brightest part of the scene, which is the sky, and your foreground will be dark, it'll be underexposed. So to overcome that, we use graduated filters where we can darken the sky or lessen the exposure in the sky, making our camera exposure a hell of a lot easier. And I'll show you what this filter is. I don't know if you can see that or not, but it starts off dark, then comes down and fades out. That's a 3-stop graduated filter. Now, what that does, when I sit that in the camera, such as this, I push it all the way down, looking at live view in the camera. I then line up the horizon. Then I push this filter back up, just that it's just above the horizon line. What that does then, that brings the exposure down in the highlighted part of your image, which is the sky. Now, these filters come in various strengths. I tend to use a 3-stop or a 6-stop half grad, where it's dark at the top and then it fades out to a clear part of the filter. Now, what about if you're photographing the ocean? You got the beach, you got the water, then you got an unbroken horizon line. Well, this is where a hard grad comes into it. It's a half grad, but it's hard, and I'll show you what that is. I hope you can see this. It's dark at the top, but it remains dark to the edge. Completely different to the one I've just put on the camera here. And the reason why we use that is because you've got an unbroken horizon line. You've got the water where it meets, or the ocean where it meets the sky. You've got nothing interrupting that, so you can have the hard grad, and the hard grad edge can sit right on that horizon line. Once again, it will make your exposure a bit easier. Now, a lot of people ask me, well, how do you know which filter to use? Well, I've been doing this for many years, so I can just look at the scene, take a meter reading and know exactly what I need, and usually it's a 3 or a 6 stop. But there's other ways you can do it. You can go with your gut feeling and you can put a couple of filters on, take a couple of shots, look at the exposure, and if you're happy with that, well then that's the filter that you would use. But there's another way, and I think a more successful way of doing it. Now, I'm hopeless at mathematics, never been any good at it, but I do understand this part of it. You put your camera in aperture priority, because with landscape photography you're not looking at fast shutter speed, so you're around about f8 or f11. You take a meter reading of the sky. Now, if that's 1/250th of a second, you remember that. Then you take a meter reading of the dark foreground in front of you. Now, that could be at 1/60th of a second. So for argument's sake, if it's 2 stops overexposed because of the sky, put on your 3-stop neutral density filter, because that way it will make your exposure come down, and a hell of a lot easier for the camera and yourself to achieve fairly well exposed images. Now, these filters aren't cheap. You can get cheap ones or inexpensive ones, but you do run into a color cast problem. These ones I use a particular brand called Nissi, which are expensive. You're looking at $250 for just one of these, so you don't really want to drop them. However, they don't scratch. They're fairly well built. Even though they're a piece of glass, you still got to look after them. But what I say, if you're going to get into this type of photography using these filters, I suggest you spend as much as you can on them, because a lot of people go out and spend $60, $70, $80 on these type of filters, and within 12, 18 months they think, well, I need something better, so they've got to go out and spend the $230, $240. Most kits can range up to $1,000 for various filters and a filter holder like this one here. Now, it's a good idea to try and afford or spend the most money you can on your filters. Now, another good thing about the filter system is if you've got side light and it's hitting, say, the mountain, like I took a shot in the Blue Mountains last weekend, it was side light coming from the left, it was just on golden hour, it was coming to the left and lighting up the mountain really, really good. Now, there was a lot of light coming out of the left-hand side of the frame, and I looked at my histogram and I thought, it's going to be overexposed. So the good thing about these filter holders is that you can turn them like so. That way it's at an angle, and that will reduce the exposure here, but it won't reduce the exposure on that side of the frame. So it's a little bit of experimentation, and quite frankly it's a lot of fun, and you'll be surprised at how well the images come out by using these half grad filters. I would say 90-95% of my landscape photography I use these filters. It's raining today here, so I couldn't get out. I was going to do this outside and show you out in the field how these things really work, but very, very cloudy today. There was no sun available up here in the mountains, so I couldn't get out. But I will take this out once we get a bit of sun, probably next week, next weekend or sometime during the week. I'll do it for you, and I'll take all this gear out and I'll show you exactly what it looks like through the back of the viewfinder of the Canon here. So I hope that's a bit of an introduction for you. As I said, don't shy away from filters. They're very, very good. They're great to use, and they do make your landscape photography a little bit easier, especially when it comes to exposure. So that's it for today and another episode of Sniper Photography. Yeah, just keep an eye out for my next part 2 of this video, so which I should be able to post next weekend. So that's it for today. So as I always say, be nice to yourself, family and friends. Please stay safe and keep smiling. Bye for now.